Now that we have discussed the persistent question of the origin of Ashkenazi Jewry in the previous video, let's go straight to Khazaria and try to understand what exactly do we know about the story of the conversion of the Khazars in that region, possibly in the 8th century. The story of Khazaria is especially fascinating when you think about the way it has been received by Jewish history. This is what the German historians call it, the Rezeptionsgeschichte, or the history of the reception, how an idea is formed and developed and spread around. Perhaps the most important element of the Rezeptionsgeschichte, wow, it's hard to say, of the Khazar conversion is this book, the Kuzari, written by Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, very, very important Spanish Jewish thinker in the 12th century. The story described in the Kuzari is essentially the story of the Khazar conversion as this great poet and philosopher developed into a massive book. The story goes like this. Basically, there is this King Bulan who somewhere around the year 740 is, very spiritual individual and concerned with the practice of paganism among his people and looking at the growth of monotheistic movements, particularly Christianity and Islam. And both Christianity and Islam are making geographic headway in Central Asia and approaching his borders. And he thinks to himself, oh, so what should I be doing? Should I be remaining a pagan? Should I join one of these other faiths and so on? And so he has a debate where he brings together a Jew, a Muslim, and a Christian. I know it sounds like an offensive joke, but it's not. And he has them have a trilateral debate over which religion is superior. In the end, as you might expect, given the fact that this is Rabbi Yehuda Halevi writing it, King Bulan decides to accept Judaism, and all of his court and the Kuzari, the Khazarian people, ultimately follow him into Judaism. That's essentially the story. Now, I hope you noticed that there is 500 years difference between the setting of this story and the authorship of the Kuzari. That's half a millennium. That's a lot of time. And we have to understand that the Kuzari was chosen as a subject for Rabbi Yehuda Halevi because of circumstances in the Iberian Peninsula in his day, specifically the trilateral relationship between Jews, Muslims, and Christians, which was very unique to Spain and Portugal. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi essentially used the story of the conversion of the Khazars as a kind of a literary foil to have a larger philosophical discussion about the relative merits of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And then, of course, by doing so, to demonstrate the superiority of Judaism. That's the essential idea of the Kuzari, and the actual historical elements of the conversion of the Khazars is not necessarily important for what Rabbi Yehuda Halevi wanted to achieve in his literary work. So let us set aside the Kuzari as a historical source. It's definitely not intended to serve as a historical source. It's intended to serve as a literary philosophical source. Let's try to go back and understand what we do know about the period. So let's move back a couple hundred years to the correspondence of Chasdai ibn Shaprut. Again, we're still about 300 years distant from the actual events described, but this is a fascinating and very important source, which was exceptionally important for Yehuda Halevi's work as well. Chasdai ibn Shaprut, who I hope we will discuss in a few lectures when we look at Spain in the 10th century, very important diplomat who communicated with Jewish communities throughout the Mediterranean basin. And he was fascinated with the story of the Khazar conversion, which was known to him. And so he sent out some emissaries to try and reach Khazaria and find out, what's going on there? Are you guys actually Jewish? Is this actually a Jewish kingdom? Now, for reasons which will take us beyond the scope of our discussion, his emissaries did not succeed in reaching Khazaria or speaking with any actual Khazarians, but they did receive correspondence from someone who purported to have brought letters from a King Joseph of Khazaria. These letters are absolutely fascinating. They relate the story of the conversion of King Bulan. They talk about the nature of Khazarians, their Judaism, and all kinds of fascinating things. But it's widely believed that these letters were forgeries. In other words, the people who provided the letters to the messengers of Chastai ibn Shabrut were essentially engaged in some kind of con. And they have no bearing on the actuality of Khazaria, and they don't have historical value for that purpose. So they're fascinating and they're really engaging, but are they real? Are they authentic? Are they actually letters from King Joseph? Probably not. We do know, however, as we get closer